I mean, at the end of the day, we all look at it. I mean, it is basketball, and the whole quote-unquote loyalty thing is, I think it's overrated.
Don't second guess your first reaction to this trade. A 26-year-old Darius Garland for a 36-year-old James Harden is a weird move for Cleveland to make. A little bit counterintuitive even. Most of the time, blockbuster trades expand windows or shift strategic approaches, and this one does neither. One that doesn't reform the team identity in any extreme ways or add more promise to their long-term future. It's a high-stakes tweak, and either it works or the entire Midwest picks the franchise apart for decades to come. But the front office isn't dumb. They understand the risk they took, and they had real motivations for taking it. Legitimate causes for making a calculated gamble that places pressure on the present like this one does. But there's one more factor behind it, and it's a little less empirical and a little more potent. The Cleveland Cavaliers aren't the only ones that need this to work.
Add color to everything you touch.
How do you replace a figure so iconic that he defined the organization for 2 decades? The answer is you don't, not right away. When LeBron James left Cleveland to don the purple and gold, every Cavaliers fan knew they were in for an extremely rough couple of years. They had no Kyrie, no LeBron, no recognizable stars or exciting young players, and because of that, there were some dark days ahead. No one was getting their heads lost in the clouds, dreaming about big-time free agents. They all knew the reality in front of them. Over the next few years, the Cavs lost a lot. They played season after season without ever looking like a potential playoff team. Just a bunch of young guys and new players losing in front of deflated arenas. But there was one beneficial trade-off. That irrelevancy made them temporarily anonymous in the eyes of the national media, and that anonymity gave the franchise the space it needed to be patient. Over the next couple years, they made some future-oriented trades, built through the draft, and waited for the right star to be made available, and in the summer of 2022, they found their guy. Donovan Mitchell was coming to Cleveland for a handful of future draft picks and an assortment of developing players, and that fundamentally changed the outlook of the franchise. Now with developing young stars like Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen beside their new addition, the Cavs were contenders, a reinvented squad looking to wake the basketball world up. And just a little further east, the other character in this story was doing the same thing. After the Brooklyn Nets experiment made its chaotic end, James Harden was starting over. In 2022, he made his abridged debut with the 76ers. And all things considered, the results were promising. A resurgent second half of the season and a trip to the conference semifinals was enough to leave 76er fans optimistic. But this year was different. With a full offseason to prepare and cultivate chemistry, those fans were hoping for even more. Both Harden and the Cavaliers were facing the same thing. They were going to be measured against the standard of newly set expectations that were young enough to be hopeful. This was their chance to validate what their supporters believed about them, and through the regular season, they both looked like they were on track to do that. The Cavs went 51-31. Donovan Mitchell had the best season of his career, and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley broke out in a real way. Then up in Philly, James Harden led the league in assists and gave the 76ers someone else to lean on when Joel Embiid was out. But as any NBA fan will tell you, the real success is measured in the postseason. For Cleveland, their taste of playoffs would come against the New York Knicks, another resurgent brand that had been catalyzed by the addition of a scoring guard. And it went pretty poorly. Donovan Mitchell played like Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland was great for a point guard in his first postseason, but everyone else looked overwhelmed. Evan Mobley floated in and out of relevance. Jarrett Allen seemed mostly uninvolved, and the Knicks ended the series in 5 games, most of which weren't really close. At the end of it, Jarrett Allen said what everyone was thinking.
Even for me, the lights were brighter than expected.
It was a frustrating thing to hear, but it was reality. The team wasn't ready yet. For James Harden, things weren't that simple. The first round was a sweet, albeit somewhat easy act of revenge against the shell of his old team. After quickly sweeping the Nets, Philadelphia faced their first real test, the Boston Celtics. Boston was younger and had less star power than the 76ers, but they were also defending conference champs. A win against them would launch Philly into an entirely new conversation and give Harden the one thing he didn't really have have throughout his decorated career, an iconic playoff series. And in Game 1, he looked like he was well on his way to it. The Beard dropped an extremely efficient 45 points without Joel Embiid on the floor, leading the shorthanded 76ers to a shocking upset. But from there, things got a lot weirder. In the next two contests, Harden was just flat out bad. He scored a total of 28 points on 17% from the field in 2 losing efforts. Then he flipped a switch in Game 4. Down 2-1, he scored 42 points, including the game-winning 3 in overtime to breathe new life into the Sixers. He followed that up with a balanced playmaking effort in Game 5 that helped them take a 3-2 lead. And now, people were talking. The narrative of Harden as a poor playoff performer was fading away before our eyes, but the last 2 games brought it right back. In Game 6, Harden scored 13 points in another rough shooting night, and in Game 7, he scored 9 while Jason Tatum ended the series with a 50 ball. Fair or not, people drew the same conclusions about James Harden and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The lights were too bright. There was a lot of reevaluation over that offseason. In Cleveland, they came to the conclusion that they were disappointed, but not alarmed. A first-round exit for a team as young as theirs wasn't the worst thing. They kept their core pieces intact, added a couple of key role players to open the offense up, and trusted everyone on the roster to improve their game in incremental ways. The regular season didn't give them a whole lot of clarity on how that turned out. The defense was a little worse, and the offense had its rough patches, but most of that could be chalked up to injuries. Mitchell, Mobley, and Garland were all out for extended stretches, but through all of that, they still finished as the 4th seed in a bizarre Eastern Conference. The glass was exactly half full, so really, they were trending in whichever direction you wanted them to be trending. The situation in Philly was different. That demanded more urgency because James Harden didn't have time to wait and see. He was turning 34 soon, and he wanted to know his next franchise was committed to him in the long term, but according to the reports, they weren't. Negotiations stalled, and once it became clear that Daryl Morey wasn't going to give him the contract he'd reportedly been promised, Harden decided to blow the whole thing up by giving us one of the best offseason moments in recent history.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of me.
In a shocking turn of events, James Harden was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers a couple months after that. For a little bit, it sounded like a cool homecoming moment on what looked like a stacked team. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and now James Harden. The Southern California All-Stars united in real life instead of an Instagram graphic. But in reality, it wasn't perfect. Russ being willing to come off the bench fixed some of the issues, but Kawhi and Paul George were the guys getting most of the shots. That cut Harden's on-ball usage down to its lowest point since he came off the bench. On the bright side, it kind of worked. The Clippers won 51 games and locked in the 4th seed, but it also meant Harden's numbers dropped dramatically, giving his critics all the ammo they needed with a quick glance at his stats. Who you agreed with was really a matter of personal intuition. It was a pivot year for Harden and the Cavaliers, a chance to really establish their trajectory, but the playoffs just ended up pushing the question down the line. The Clippers ended up playing the Mavericks in the first round. In Game 4, James Harden turned in a masterpiece to tie the series up. Then Luka and Kyrie took turns making impossible shots to win the last 2 games while everyone on the Clippers went ice cold. A first-round exit for a team with that much talent is not a success. But Kawhi Leonard only played 2 games, and they lost to the exact same recipe that beat everyone in the West. It was hard to call a loss like that a failure. Over in the East, the Cavs had a little bit more luck. First, they got a nice draw in the opening round and beat a developing Magic team. That series itself was an ugly defensive battle that went 7 games, but Cleveland won, so everyone was willing to overlook the offensive issues. There was one thing they couldn't overlook though: Jared Allen's injury. Allen fractured his rib against Orlando in Game 4 and had been ruled out for the rest of the playoffs. Without him, there was a lot of angst the defense would fall apart, and in the next round against the Boston Celtics, it did. did. In Game 2, their offense was explosive enough to overcome that. But after that game, Donovan Mitchell was ruled out for the series, and that more or less ended it. You couldn't blame them. Not for losing to the eventual champs with two of their key guys out of the lineup, but it was still deflating. Next year, the Cavs would be entering the third season of the Donovan Mitchell era, and in LA, James Harden would be playing for the 16th season of his career without a title run. They were both facing the questions they'd been hearing forever. If they didn't answer them soon, people were going to stop asking. At this point, the timeline had moved forward in Cleveland. They couldn't keep stagnating because the team was young, so they made a drastic change. They fired head coach JB Bickerstaff and brought in Kenny Atkinson. Atkinson was viewed as an offensive mastermind throughout NBA coaching circles, and that was exactly what the Cavs needed. Someone to unlock their two guards at the same time while giving the bigs the structure they needed to thrive, and almost immediately, he did exactly that. Cleveland lived in the half court, ran more pick and rolls than anyone in the league, and took full advantage of the two perimeter engines they had. Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley all made a trip to All-Star Weekend, and when the season ended, the Cavs were sitting at the top of the East with a ridiculous record of 64-18. It was still just the regular season, but even by regular season standards, that was ridiculous. Either they arrived or they created one hell of a mirage. In Los Angeles, things were looking up as well. In the offseason, the Clippers let Paul George walk, which meant a large portion of the scoring burden would be shifted to James Harden, and he handled it with ease. The system was back like it never left, knocking down step-back threes, drawing fouls in the lane, and creating easy buckets for rolling big men en route to an all-star selection and a 50-win season. For the first time since 2023, James Harden was generating buzz, and the Cavs were being discussed on morning talk shows as a true contender. Playoff excitement was back for both of them, and Harden had the first opportunity to make a real statement against Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. If he and the Clippers could eliminate Denver, they'd cement themselves as a real threat. For most of the series, Harden was great. He was the primary initiator for basically everything Los Angeles ran, and when they needed a big performance from him in Game 6, he came through with 28 points and 8 assists to extend the series. It was another do-or-die game against the established power in the league, another opportunity to silence the main critique of his entire career, and instead, it instantly warped into a nightmare. Everyone on the Clippers looked completely exhausted. Harden put up 7 points and 13 assists in a primetime game that was over the moment it began. The fan Steve Ballmer flew in, stood in the stands cheering for a team that never showed up, as the Nuggets gave Denver another memory to treasure, another special moment that he was on the wrong end of. Flipping to the other side of the bracket, the Cavs made quick work of Darius Garland's good friend Tyler Hero, taking down the Heat in 4 games. Next up were the Pacers, an upstart young squad that was supposed to be 2 years away from being a real player in the East. But right out of the gate, the series had an eerie feeling to it. To start, Darius Garland was dealing with a toe injury he'd suffered in Game 2 of the Heat series, and Cleveland would have to play the first 2 games without him. That was already worrying, but once Indiana pulled off the Game 1 upset in the Cavs building, going down 0-2 was historically a death sentence, especially for teams that started with home court advantage. Thankfully, Donovan Mitchell came to the arena with his cape on. Mitchell was doing everything for them. He gave the Pacers 48 points, and for a while, it looked like he had really saved the day. With 50 seconds to go, they were up 7. Towels were waving. Fans were shaking the building. Order was on the verge of being restored. Then, all hell broke loose. Aaron Naismith putback, Cleveland turnover. Pascal Siakam layup, Cleveland turnover, and then one of those step-back game winners that Tyrese Halliburton hit in basically every series in last year's playoffs. Garland came back the next game, but he was hardly himself, and honestly, it was probably too late anyways. Indiana ran away with it and ended the series in only 5 games. 64 hollow wins, a resurgent all-star season no one would remember, and our 2 protagonists were exactly where they'd always been, standing still as the clock ticked by. There's an invisible breaking point for every team, and for slightly different reasons. The Clippers and the Cavs hit theirs this season. For the Clippers, it was a result of old age catching up to them, and Pablo Torre noticing a couple missing trees. For Cleveland, it was two-pronged. First, there's the landscape of the East. The conference is more wide open than it will be anytime in the near future, and for a team that's been running into a wall for multiple years in a row, a bracket like that is a mandate to do better. They wanted to see another dominant regular season effort to give them some confidence about what this team could do in the postseason, and through the first half of the season, that just didn't happen. Darius Garland's toe injury kept lingering, and without a reliable floor general in the backcourt, the team was significantly more inconsistent than people were hoping. It wasn't a disaster, but it was uninspiring, and both the fans and the decision makers really needed to be inspired. It felt like they were marching towards another second round exit that would waste Donovan Mitchell's constant heroics. When the trade deadline was approaching, they faced some hard truths, and they came to the conclusion that a championship push couldn't wait any longer. They couldn't hope that this core would figure it out this year, especially with how frustrating the season had already been. As fate would have it, both the Clippers and the Cavs found themselves in need of a change, and after a brief and unusually secretive period of negotiations, they made the deal. LA got a building block for their future, and Cleveland got an experienced star with immediate urgency. From a production standpoint, Harden was more valuable than Garland at this point in their careers. He's a more lucrative scorer and a higher volume playmaker who already knows all the ins and outs of his game, and the best part is he's played in a two-guard system before. We all remember what he did with Chris Paul by his side, and the Cavs believe he can do that again. On top of it all, that gives Cleveland more size and more reliable durability, traits they could rely on even if he doesn't play his best in the playoffs. The basketball reasons check out, even if giving up an all-star who's 10 years younger was the price to pay for it. But as important as any of that was, the real difference was what we mentioned earlier, the urgency. James Harden has been through exactly what the Cavs went through. Harden's a decorated regular season superstar who hasn't been able to find the same magic in the playoffs, and they're a regular season team tired of going on early vacations. They need the same thing, and they've needed the same thing for years, a playoff breakthrough, and their bet is that together they can pull it off.